Every day, the media feeds us a daily diet of seemingly contradictory consumer trends that in the end rarely make a bit of difference. One minute, consumers are radically cutting back. The next, Apple is announcing $3 billion in iPad sales in 90 days. We prefer truth through science. Instead of the usual recipe of anecdotes, conjecture, or statistically inaccurate pop research, we chose to use science to get to the real truth. More to the point, we studied 800,000 people in 3 countries over 10 years and looked at 2,000 measures of what they bought, why they bought it, and how that changed over time. The results were startling. It is clear that there are 2 fundamentally distinct types of consumers with extremely different reasons behind what they buy and why they buy it. How distinctly different? They might as well be on 2 different planets. Each planet contains people of all ages, incomes, and social groups. It turned out that these factors are nowhere near as important as typically expected. They're not really indicators of consumers' propensity and motivation to spend. In fact, over the 10 years of the study, not one man or woman moved from one planet to the other, no matter how much his or her income went up or down. It turns out that it's a core set of what people value that drives consumption, far more than any other factors. What is crystal clear is that the 2 planets couldn't be more different, and in this economy, they're getting further and further apart. The people on the first planet are driven by the deal, while those on the other planet are motivated primarily by the search for the extraordinary, a true sense of the one and only, and demonstrate a clear willingness to pay for it. Just as crucially is the fact that when economic conditions worsen, any business stuck in the space between these 2 planets struggles more and more. On the deal planet, we have a huge number of people, 52% of the consuming population. This planet is pretty easy to understand, as the evidence clearly shows. People here are motivated primarily by the typical factors we're trained to expect. Statistically, 3 dominant things drive the decisions for these people to buy: price, features, and status. We call this Planet Traditional. Traditionals need an extraordinary deal if they're going to spend their money. Offers, deals, and deep discounts are increasingly the currency on Planet Traditional. The evidence proves this behaviour is permanent. You do not want to have the second best offer on Planet Traditional. Then there's the other planet, where life is a little bit more complex. The individuals that live here make their buying decisions on a measurably broader range of factors. We have named these people NEOs, the New Economic Order. The evidence shows that the economic importance of this group is surging. NEOs research, shop, and buy in significantly different ways to traditionals. Everyone wants the best price, but for NEOs, price is just the cost of falling in love. They need to feel a connection with the product or service and implicitly see it as a representation of their own individuality. As a result, they place a far greater premium on a whole range of things that often wouldn't even register for someone on Planet Traditional. Some of the most significant of these include design. NEOs place a high value not only on how things look, but on how that design translates into how the product works. Authenticity. They want the real deal, no substitutes, and who they buy from is just as important as what they buy. Provenance. NEOs place a high value upon things that are unique and individual, with a real sense of being the one and only. Discovery. The whispered secret is far more valuable than something mainstream to the individual who lives on Planet Neo. They want to find things for themselves and not have them shoved at them by aggressive marketing. They value new experiences and they want things that are on the edge. They are the first to try new ideas, new concepts, and new places. When Neos discover things that are a match for their personal values, they spend freely. In fact, 91% of all the people who can be classified as big spenders are Neos. Last time the economy tanked, a remarkable thing happened. Neos became more Neo. While they cut back on things that didn't actually matter to them, their expenditure on products and services that truly connected actually went up. The most obvious example of this is, of course, everyone's poster child, Apple. Their cutting-edge, uniquely designed products and anti-corporate style are a natural fit for the Neo, and their sales continued to skyrocket at full price all the way through the downturn. On Planet Neo, however, there is a natural tendency towards more individual relationships, as it's easier to connect with authentic brands and people than corporate mission statements. As you start to understand, the world in front of you is made up of two very different planets, one increasingly neo and the other ever more traditional. The green shoots of thriving neo businesses are starting to appear everywhere. You see them every day. What may look like trends to the untrained eye is actually companies and individuals that have found a way to connect with the very consumers who place a real value upon the unique, the individual and the authentic, and they're willing to pay for it. So, when you hear one day that consumers are cutting back and the next that they're actually buying more local produce, personal services or cool technology, you aren't going mad. What you are actually hearing are the stories of two very different planets and the people who live on them. The evidence is clear. Neos and aspiring Neos are responsible for 77% of consumer spending and almost every cent of profit that businesses make. In fact, their spending adds up to an economy within an economy. Over on Planet Traditional, the downward pressure on costs and margin will remain relentless. But on Planet Neo, things look, well, very different, and there are still many gaps to be filled. For example, as yet, there is no Neo Bank, Neo Energy Company, or Neo Telecommunications Company. The holes are everywhere. Understanding the unmet needs of Neos reveals opportunities for growth in sectors where previously it seemed that none was possible, creating millions of jobs. The hallmarks of the Neo economy are all around you, but its potential has barely been scratched. Isn't it time to talk to the people who literally wrote the book on Neos?